Hello everyone, welcome to SJECE classes where learning never stops. If you are new to our channel, please remember to subscribe and share. Today we will start with your first chapter of history, that is the period of transition. This is the first part of your lesson. In today's session, we will learn about period of transition, sources to study the modern period, Renaissance and Reformation, voyages and discoveries. Before understanding this chapter, we must know about the periods of history. History, as you know, is classified into three periods: ancient, medieval and modern. In ancient, we learned about civilization and Vedic literatures. When we talk about medieval history, we speak about Delhi Sultanate, early Mughals, Akbar, Bhakti and Sufi movement. But in your 8th class, we will learn all about our modern history. So, what does transition mean? Transition means changes from state to another or one era to another. So, in this chapter, we are going to learn changes which took place from medieval period to modern period in Europe and its impact on the world. The transition from the medieval to the modern period in Europe was a gradual process and did not happen suddenly. The modern period in India began much later than in Europe. Modern period in Europe started in 15th century and in India, modern period started in 18th century after the Britishers came to the country. A number of developments which were interrelated took place in the period from about 14th to the 17th century. They laid the foundation of the modern world. Towards the end of the Middle Ages, many changes were going on in Europe. One of the first developments that marked the beginning of a new era was the Renaissance. The term Renaissance is a French word which means rebirth or revival. The Renaissance age describes the period beginning around 1300 AD when there was a new interest in learning about ancient Greece and Rome. Another interrelated development was the Reformation. The Reformation refers to the movement against certain practices of the Catholic Church and the authority of the Pope. The Reformation led to the rise of Protestantism, which led to the setting up of Protestant churches other than Catholic churches. Another development which we will study further was a series of voyages of discoveries. This period seen remarkable inventions like mariner's compass and telescope. Now let me tell you about the sources. A source is something which provides information or from which information can be obtained. There are various types of sources used by the historians in writing the history of a particular period. They are classified as primary sources and secondary sources. Primary sources are original documents like manuscripts, the handwritten work, letters, reports, newspapers, paintings, photographs, monuments, artifacts, etc. These are some examples of primary sources. Secondary sources are created by interpreting primary sources. Scholarly books, articles, reviews are some examples of secondary sources. The sources help us to study the changes that take place in the late medieval period. According to the sources, changes in Europe started by the end of the Middle Ages when the feudal system of the society which began to disintegrate it. Now, what is feudal system? It is an economic system that existed in the Middle Ages in which people received land and protection from a lord and worked and fought for him. In a feudal system, a peasant or worker known as vassal received a piece of land in return for serving a lord or king, especially during times of wars. This integration of feudal system gave rise to a new type of social system which affected every aspect of life and marked the beginning of the modern age. This new social system was known as Renaissance. This brings the development in art, architecture, literature, religion, and politics. Renaissance or revival of new learning gave rise to new ideas. People began to question everything and did not accept anything as it is. People believe that the knowledge should be used for the benefit of man. This age was the age of reasoning, questioning, observation, and experimentation. In medieval times, the church has dominated the life of the people, but people now began to challenge the authority of the churches and did not believe them blindly. They were encouraged to judge things on the basis of reasoning rather than superstition. They also raised questions about policies and practices of the church. Now we will discuss the main features of Renaissance. The main features of Renaissance were rationalism, humanism, scientific spirit, spirit of inquiry. All the factors contributed strongly in changing the outlook of the European people toward lives forever. Now, what is rationalism? Rationalism, the scholars of this period who are rationalists refused to accept anything blindly. They wanted the logic behind everything. That is the reason for it. Humanism. The Renaissance thinkers believed in life in this world. They emphasized that all the human beings had a right to express themselves freely, develop their talents, to think freely, and live life happily. The focuses shifted from the divine to the human. Social or scientific spirit. Scientific spirit gained importance during the Renaissance. The knowledge acquired this time was based on a scientific approaches. That is, which means before coming to a conclusion, people first observed, then experimented, and finally arrived at a conclusion. Spirit of inquiry. This was due to the spirit of inquiry that an age of exploration, experimentation, and discoveries was ushered by the Renaissance. With the invention of the printing press, people became aware of the new diversified ideas through the medium of books, newspapers, which become easily available. The invention of printing press was also a powerful factor in the spread of the Renaissance. Now we came to the next topic, which is Reformation. What is Reformation? Reformation was a movement started by Martin Luther against the corrupt practices of the Roman Catholic Church. Through Reformation, two developments took place. Number one, Protestant Reformation, which led to the split of Christianity from the Roman Catholic Church. Second, Catholic Reformation resulted the reforms within the Roman Catholic Church. Reformation movement was also the part of the Renaissance which led to the establishment of Protestant churches in nearly half of Europe. This is because the reformers presumed that the Catholic churches neglected their responsibilities and people began to lose confidence in the church leaders. This also led to the end of the medieval period and the emergence of the modern world. Now let me tell you about voyages and discoveries of some sailors such as Vasco da Gama, Bartholomew, Christopher Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci, and Ferdinand Magellan. Bartholomew discovered Cape of Good Hope in southern tip of Africa. Vasco da Gama followed the same route and reached Calicut on the west coast and discovered a new sea route to India. With this sea route, new Portuguese were able to trade with India, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, China, and Japan. Christopher Columbus was an Italian sailor who was helped by the Spanish Queen Isabella and explored a new sea route to the east. He traveled through the Atlantic Ocean and reached West Indies in 1492. He did not realize that he had discovered a new continent, and he called the people of that continent Indians. Ferdinand Magellan was a Portuguese navigator who proved that the world was round. He sailed through the Atlantic, reached the Pacific Ocean, went through the southernmost point of the South America, and reached the West Indies in 1519 AD. His ship Victoria completed the voyage round the world. This is the picture of the travel of Christopher Columbus. Amerigo Vespucci, an Italian sailor, has made 4 voyages to the places visited by Columbus. America was named after him. With this, we came to an end with today's session. In next session, we will study about Industrial Revolution, major inventions and impact of Industrial Revolution. Thank you. Have a nice day. Stay safe.